up, Insiders? Welcome back to another episode of The Inside Perspective, where we intentionally listen, experience, and grow. If you're new here, some ways to support me, of course, is listening to the episode. And then if you're on a podcast platform, liking, downloading an episode, giving me 5 stars, all great things to help, right? But if you're here on the tube of the U, aka YouTube, like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, let me know how you're feeling about the episode and what's going on in your life. So, without further ado, let's jump into the first segment. All right, so our first segment is called Art at the Moment, and this is about art of any degree that has impacted me in a specific way as of recent or is directly correlated to the topic. The topic for today's episode is medically learning your uterus. And so the art at the moment does not have anything to do with, well, we could say it has something to do with the uterus, right? Kehlani's album Crash came out about 2 weeks ago, and it's been the only thing that I want in my ears. I listen to it when I'm going to work, when I come home, when I'm working out. Like, there's a specific song for everything on that album from top to bottom. There's still some songs that really, like Crash. So the title album is called Crash, and there's also a song titled Crash. And whenever I first listened to it, it just made me feel so much in my chest that, quite frankly, I had to skip it. I could not get through the song because I was like, okay. But again, still great song. My top 2 right now, I don't even know if I can do this, but I'd say my top 3 in no particular order. Damn, it's so hard. Still in no particular order, because then that's going to end up moving to top 5, and then I'm just going to have the entire album, right? So, Next to You, After Hours, What I Want, 8, and Susia. I know that's 5 songs, but that's what we're going to do, right? So 5 songs. They've been just really helpful in helping me pay attention to what is happening actively in front of me, and to honor every situation for what it is. I remember when I met Kehlani and I had the chance to talk to her for a little bit, and I talked to her about how much she helped me realize that I didn't have to stay on one side of the spectrum of masculinity or femininity. I could fluctuate, and I could accept and love myself for exactly who I was and how I was. And it was just an amazing experience, even just being able to meet her, but let alone talk to her and let her know how much of her authenticity has helped me grow and helped me settle into the woman that I know that I am to be. And so that, on top of having that experience with her and then listening to her music again with, I think this is her 4th studio album, I just love authenticity. You know, I just love someone that can sit there and say, this is exactly who and how I am, and you can take it or leave it. And I fuck with that. So that would be our art at the moment for now, for today's episode. If you haven't had the chance yet, I don't even care if you're not a Kehlani fan, go ahead and listen to that shit, okay? Our next segment is called The Science Behind It. And within this segment, we talk about the scientific basis or medical research about the topic at hand. And so the title, as already said, is Medically Learn Your Uterus. And so for me, I wanted to go into our menstrual cycle. And what are all the phases of that, right? Like, we understand that, like, whenever we're bleeding the skin, the endometrium lining, or what is happening inside our uterus is now shedding and leaving us because we are not pregnant. But let's start from right after menstruation, and then we'll end with menstruation, right? So we're going to go ahead and start with the follicular phase. And so what happens in this phase is that this is when several eggs mature inside the small cysts or follicles that we have sitting on our ovaries. They're just growing, maturing. There's different types of hormones that are happening at this time. So the hypothalamus is releasing FSH, which I believe is called follicular stimulating hormone. So like that follicle that I was talking about during the follicular stage, that starts to grow. That hormone is coming from our hypothalamus and encouraging that action. And at the same time, estrogen and progesterone levels are rising. So this is whenever we're like really energized and motivated. You know, it's like our bodies are growing and creating, and we too want to grow and create outside of that. So this is a great time to like do some focused work. Anything creative, like you want to do an online course, or you want to start writing, you want to start doing something, drawing, right after your period technically is a good time to do it. To continue that, after the follicular phase, we have the ovulation phase, which I too also like to call the hunch phase. Like, cause I just feel like when you're ovulating, you either just want to hunch or you just want to eat everything. Like, at least that's my experience, right? And so what's going on scientifically at that moment is that this is when the egg is actually released from the biggest follicle and travels through the fallopian tube, where at that point it can be fertilized. If it's not fertilized, it dissolves between 24 and 48 hours. And so after it's been, I said ovary, right? Yeah. After it's been like on your ovary, that biggest follicle has grown and is now detached. It goes through your tubes, your fallopian tubes, into the uterus. And it's just like, all right, I'm going to sit here waiting for the party to start. This is what we're here for. This is what we're about to do. And so now during this point in time, your estrogen and testosterone levels are at its peak. So you feel confident, okay? Like, this is a point in time where you feel like you can do anything, quite frankly. And I think that's why I say you either want to hunch, eat, and then add to that, tackle biggest challenges that have been in your way. Like, if you're confused why once a month or 6 days out of the month you feel like, oh yeah, I can do this, I can tackle anything, and then it just kind of drops. Well, it's because you're more than likely moving out of your ovulation phase. But to get back into where we are in the ovulatory period, right? This is times wherever you feel very social, very confident. And so people encourage you at this point to engage in group work, go to conferences, network, any type of events, or have those very hard conversations. Because right now you feel most within yourself, most confident in yourself, understanding and seeing things as clearly as possible. And so we know that after ovulation, well, we may not know this because I thought it was menstruation, but I was about to lie to y'all. After ovulation is the luteal phase. And so during this luteal phase, this is when the endometrium, which is the lining of the uterus, is thick and prepared to support a pregnancy or be released in your period. So far we've seen the story of the egg growing on the ovary, the egg growing on the ovary during the follicular stage, now the egg leaving the ovary, going through our fallopian tube, and then sitting within the uterus. Or what do they call that? Uterine canal? I think I'm right. Nevertheless, sitting within there, right? And so now the luteal phase is now the outer parts of your body being like, okay, we have an egg and a hatch. There may or may not be sperm coming to fertilize this egg. Let's thicken up the lining so we can now create this layer of protection for these cells that are going to start growing. So now the egg will either be fertilized or it will not. And then the uterine lining will start to shed, which is then our period. Now, everybody's periods and everybody's stages of these in the menstrual cycle is very different over time. I remember when I first started having my period, I think I only bled for like 2-3 days, and that was it. But then I had some of my friends that were bleeding for 7 days straight. So it's definitely different, and it varies. But paying attention to when these cycles are kind of happening for you will give you an advantage of how to work with your period instead of against your period. And so to go even deeper, I forgot that I realized that I did not mention the hormones that were associated with the luteal phase. And so this is right before menstruation. If you are not pregnant, your progesterone will rapidly decrease. So will rapidly decrease. Wow. If you are not pregnant, your progesterone will rapidly decrease, making you feel sluggish and potentially depressed. And so that time right before your period where you're kind of just irritable, done, sad, tired, depressed, it's because your progesterone levels are falling and your body's realizing that you're not pregnant. And so during this time, it is suggested to avoid any new projects or big launches and just focus really on the mundane and repetitive tasks that you have in your life. Organizing, updating, no huge big changes because you really could just be going through something. Maybe preparing or writing something like that down if you do want to make a big change during that could be helpful. But typically doctors suggest to avoid doing new things during that time because your levels are fluctuating so much. I mean, if you think about it, your body was quite literally preparing to create a human. So sure, it's a lot going on at that time, right? And so then now let's jump into the hormones for the menstrual phase of the cycle. And so this is when your estrogen levels are rising slightly and those progesterone levels do dip. And this again can just leave you feeling really low on energy, but they said that you could also be really reflective during your period. And so if there's anybody that get into those really deep thoughts and thinking, understand that that's normal. It's a part of your body going through a cycle, not only just in your uterus, but also in your brain, because that's where your hormones are being sent from, like your hypothalamus, the HPA axis. If you have questions about that, at least how cortisol works, I do have a skit on my Instagram that you can go and check that out. So also productivity tips that they suggest as well, doing analytical tasks. This is a great time for solo projects, proofreading, reviewing data, assessments. I don't know what the hell that talk about. We'll just nix those two, but also goal setting. So when you're having that reflective period, taking that time to see what you want to do differently in the future and how you can make that happen. So that would conclude what the 4 stages of the menstrual cycle is. I start from menstruation because that's what helps me think and understand it best. But if you want to start after menstruation, which would then be the follicular phase, following by the ovulation phase, and then into the luteal phase, which then leads us back to menstruation. So I am looking off a chart, and I will either literally have this in the episode or have it on my website. I've been struggling with my website as of recent. They're like not trying to communicate. So sorry if anybody's been trying to go and look up the resources that I have. Something else that I wanted to speak to also before I move on to the next segment was about some of the things that can make our menstrual cycle suck even more. There are certain foods like hot, spicy foods will make your cramps worse. Fibroids will make your cramps worse. And fibroids are small buildup of, I think, tissue within the muscular wall of your uterus. And there's several places in which you can have them. Some that will literally make your period worse, and some that may not affect it at all. That endometrium lining, endometriosis, extremely painful periods. That's also something that could impact your flow. If you're having a lot of clots whenever you're having your period, that's also not very healthy. So again, going to the doctor and making sure that everything is kosher. So even if that means you get a typical pelvic exam, or if you end up having to get an ultrasound done, I think they call it like an intravaginal ultrasound, just so they can get a look around and see what's going on internally. I can't help but wink every time I can use my name in something. But yes, listening to your body is very important. So if you feel like you're having really heavy periods, or you just don't know, or you're just not sure, I have some tips that can help in terms of I have some tips that I'll share at the end of the episode that will help you keep track of like how heavy you're bleeding and what you've been eating and how that impacts, all the shit, all the things, right? Also being dehydrated will really fuck you up. Definitely try to drink as much water as possible. stretching any way to relieve the pressure of, remember, your uterus is hunkering down. So whenever it swells, it's like still sinking down even more. So if there are any positions in which you can lift your hips up and relieve some of that pressure, that will help with pain during your period. But again, if it's pain from like fibroids or anything that could be a mass growing down in your uterus, like, you need to go and see a doctor, and you kind of won't know that unless you go and check in. So if you have not been to the gynecologist this year, and it's been over a year since you've seen your gynecologist, I highly suggest you to actually pause the episode right now and call your doctor, because that's important. All right, now, so we can move into the very next segment. You know, we're gonna keep the show rolling. This segment is called I Can't Make This Shit Up. And it's practically a story time related to the topic that's going on. And I'm sure you guys are so excited to learn about whatever story I have about me learning my uterus. So boom pow, I can't make this shit up. I'm pretty sure I've talked to you guys in past episodes about me having bladder issues. The kidney infection, all of that. Yeah, fun times. The worst pain I ever felt in my life, because I also had kidney stones at the time because my diet sucked. Anywho, let me not get too off topic. On top of that, I was also having really painful periods, and it was getting very difficult to even like get up, like lean up. Like, I just was in so much pain. And so I decided to go and talk to my mom about it and just kind of let her know, like, what am I feeling, what's been going on. And she just let me know that, you know, fibroids run in our family. And not only that, cervical or uterine cancer is also pretty prevalent. And so she's been very proactive in making sure that she's getting the care that she needs, and has taken a few precautions in order to protect herself and relieve her of unnecessary pain now at this point. And so she encouraged me to go see her gynecologist, because I was not a fan of my current gynecologist, which made it very difficult for me to want to share things. And so I knew that I needed a new doctor, and so I found one. And so I go to my appointment, kind of let her know what I'm feeling and what's going on. And so she does the pelvic exam, and at the time she was only looking for masses like fibroids that could be adding to my pain. But come to find out, I would need an ultrasound for some of those things, because they could be small enough to where she couldn't feel them physically with her hand. And then also, I was an athlete. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm a retired athlete right now, but I'm definitely not the athlete that I used to be. And so I played basketball for 17 years. Let that sit in. I'm 25. I love basketball. I love playing for the most part. And so with my body being so used to that level of activity and always moving and shaking and up and down the court, lifting, training, yoga, stretching, massages, all the things, after school, that kind of just fell off. And so I noticed I was still working out while I was at school, because it just direct access to a gym. So yeah, being on that little campus, you know, it makes things a little easier. But when I was talking to my doctor about how so yeah, also with me working out and all the things that I was doing while working out, I realized that my pelvic floor, that I know I've talked about in an episode, was extremely tight. And so the bladder issues mixed with the pelvic floor, plus another combination of things, right? So as I was at the doctor's office, she was explaining to me that with me working out as much as I was, that my body was used to a certain type of movement, as was my uterus was used to a certain type of movement. And so I guess my brain then conceptualized that was the more that I ran around and did things, the thinner my uterine line was, because I was always exercising, moving, and blood pumping through. And so with me being a bit more stationary, my uterine lining was getting thicker. And so whenever I would bleed and have my period, it was more coming off and just extremely painful. She also ordered an ultrasound just to be sure, because I do have the family history that could be a bit concerning, and being preventative is definitely the best case to go. She decided to also order an ultrasound that could get up there and look and see what's going on. And so, long story short, I come to find out that my uterus is anteverted. And what that means is that it leans more towards my abdominal muscles and then also kind of sits on my bladder. And so all these issues that I've been having with between the tight pelvic floor, the bladder problems that was going on, questioning my ureters, questioning all the things that was actually going on with like my bodily functions and systems, I've realized how basically having a big coochie, so now let me stop, basically having not only a large uterus, but then also one that like sits forward. I'll have a picture that pops up maybe here or here. It's challenged my bladder a lot more. I'm still waiting to like really have conversation with my doctor to see if that is a part of why my periods are painful. I am now feeling a lot happier that even though while they did the scan and they did find a fibroid, that it was small enough and not really something to be concerned with, but just something that we're glad that we have a tracker of it now, so that if anything does change, we know that we need to take some action. And so although I was so overwhelmed and flustered and frustrated because I hate going to the hospital, I hate going to doctor's offices, I want to be healthy, and I don't want to have to think about my health. I just want to be healthy. And so I was a bit distraught after the appointment, because I had already gone through something of the same of having fibroadenomas in my breast. And I had to have surgery on those. And one of those masses were a tumor. And so I just was so overwhelmed with everything that was happening and everything that's been happening in my life, that just hearing news that like there even is one fibroid there was just too much for me. And so, again, I'm still proud of myself. I'm happy that I went in and went to the appointment and figured out what was going on. I took my health very seriously. But not only now do I have a tight coochie, I also have an introverted uterus that just is the icing on the cake. And so I'm interested in learning more about if there's anything that I could do to change the position of it. Apparently my doctor said there is nothing wrong with it being in that position. I wouldn't have any problem getting pregnant or giving birth, or growing a child. And so that was all good news to hear. But yeah, I am genuinely curious if there's anything that I need to do in order to just make sure that I can keep my reproductive organs on track and make sure my bladder's good. Because if big coochie sitting on my bladder, how does that affect the ability for my kidneys to filter out and send things to the bladder, and then get the bladder to the ureters and the ureters to the out? You know, does that affect anything? And so, yeah, I can't make this shit up. I can't make this shit up. And so, yeah, welcome to understanding the way my uterus is. Also, there's multiple positions for the uterus to be in. Apparently, we have normal, retroverted, retroflexed, and anteverted. I believe when I was doing my research that the retroverted and the retroflexed are very not good. not good. Sorry, I'm just getting stuck at looking at the picture. But yeah, I'm pretty sure when I seen, maybe it might not be retroverted, but I know retroflexed just may not be the greatest. In terms of pain, but in terms of birth, in terms of carrying a child, growing a child. So that's yeah. So thankfully it's not retroverted. It is retroverted, being back towards my spine. It's anteverted. So she's just, hey, what's going on? And I wonder, like, I know I don't eat the greatest, right? I know I don't eat the greatest, but I wonder if it's my coochie that's making my fupa area stick up like that. My uterus, that's just like, you know, so it doesn't matter how much working I'll do, because if I flex, that thing is gone. But if I'm sitting here chilling, man, Lil Papa just be hanging out with me. And I ain't got no problem with that. I'm learning to love my body exactly how she is and what she wants to be and how she wants to be. As long as I'm putting healthy things in my body, I need to eat more vegetables. I got all that on lock, right? But I'm still just, as I'm looking at this picture, if it's introverted, it's probably just pushing the fat muscles out, even the fat cells and the muscles out even more. And I'll take that. Because at the end of the day, that means that it's still just big coochie energy. I really enjoy sharing my business with y'all. I want you to know that. For a while, I was always really scared of just what people would think about me being so open about my shit. But then as of recently, I just was like, who gives a fuck? Like, we're all humans having a human experience. And if I can share what I need to share in order to help someone else of what they're going through, then why the hell not? I mean, I'm not trying to sit here and be a perfect person all the time. I'm far from that. I don't even want to be perfect. The only type of version of me that I want to be is so calm and loving and light and positive and patient, and also don't fuck with me. It's just very simple. And I want people to be okay with sharing their experiences because it helps more than just them. While they may be sharing something that's on their chest that has been impacting them for so long, they have no idea that if their story is the key to somebody else's pain, somebody else's process. And if I can be a conduit of that, I'm gonna do it. So, moving on. So, probably one of my favorite segments. I mean, I love telling y'all my business and I can't make this shit up. But pick up a fucking book. Pick up a fucking book. Maybe now I'm getting ideas. But again, staying focused. This segment is about books to help with understanding and what's been being discussed in the episode itself. And so off rip, I didn't have a book that came to mind, and so I decided to go and do some research. And so the book that I found is called It's Not Hysteria: Everything You Need to Know About Your Reproductive Health, But Were Never Told, by Dr. Karen Tang. And so I haven't read this book yet, but I read a couple reviews, did a quick synopsis of it, and it had great reviews. It talked about how it broke down social stigmas. It was very open to sexuality and health. I think so I read something about transgender health. And so, fuck yeah, right? Because, when we include everybody, we get to help everybody. And so that would be the book that I would suggest. I'm probably going to go ahead and pick it up. I was thinking about doing an audiobook, but I feel like this is worth having in my hands. So maybe I can write in the margins and have little notes and even find things that I've been going through myself and then bring that to my doctor. And so I suggest you pick up that fucking book. Figure out what you can learn more or learn new about yourself and how you can continue to help yourself and also advocate for yourself in the doctor's office, because that is what we're moving into next. So we got tips from Tip. My brain is so wrong. Tips from Tip. This segment is about basically my suggestions and advice that I have for you that I've used in my life and what could be helpful. And so what I'm going to be focusing on is preparing for your appointments. I don't think that you should just show up to your appointment not in the mindset and not being prepared to talk about your health and not having anything prepared to talk about in regards to your health. And so for one, they're going to ask you when your last period was. So kind of already have or know that information. If you are a person that puts it in your phone, you got the Flow app, then you'll be able to pull it up real easy. But if you're kind of like me and you mark it down in your physical calendar, you kind of always don't have that ready. So know the last day of your period. When you are experiencing your period, this is the perfect time. And even outside of this, but again, as I told you, I start with my period whenever I'm thinking about what's going on with my reproductive health. And so I document almost every little thing whenever it comes to my period. And so it starts with when did my period start? Or sometimes I'll go off of when I started cramping. So maybe a few days before. Sometimes I'll cramp a week before and then have my period almost like 13 days later. None of my business. Or maybe that was my egg dropping. See, again, still figuring it out myself. Nevertheless, I have a notebook, and in that notebook I will have a couple different columns. The first one will be when the period started. The next one would be during that day, how heavy was my flow. How many times, the next columns is how many times did I change my pad or tampon. I haven't used tampons in a very long time, and I'm really glad, because y'all see that shit that just came out about there being like literally toxic metals in tampons. Like, I swear, they're not trying to kill you, they're trying to murder you. To continue, at one point in time I was wearing a Diva cup, and so what I liked about the Diva cup too is that they had a little line that denoted, like, you know, how many milliliters that you were filling up with your blood. And so that would be a great indicator of measuring how much. And so I was saying to talk about looking at how many pads or tampons that you're using, because I think a lot of us don't realize that we may be bleeding too much, or we don't know what is a good range of bleeding should be. And so just writing that down over the course of time of your period, and then asking your doctor, like, hey, this is what I've discovered. Is this within a normal range? Is this something I should be concerned about? During my 3rd day of my period 2 months ago, I had 5 large clots. This period I had none. What does that mean? Learn your uterus. Like that's like the biggest tip of all of this, is to learn your uterus. And so when you can denote of when your cramps are worsening, and then you see that you're passing clots, or you see that you have a period that you have minimal cramping, like, you know, because your ovaries take turns dropping that egg, but the lining of your uterus is still what it is, right? So learning about what that is and what's going on. The foods that we eat, super salty foods, super sugary foods, how that has an impact on our period. I know for me, it's crazy. I crave really, really salty foods right before and during my period. And I think I read somewhere that it has something to do that you have an iron deficiency. And so with me about to bleed, it makes sense, and that correlates. And so I love figuring out and finding out those connections myself about what that looks like and how they come together. And so I be wanting fried chicken, pizza. Mind you, I'm lactose intolerant, but fuck it, we ball. Fried chicken be the biggest one. Just give me a bucket of fried chicken and shut the fuck up. Just leave me alone. Like, don't even come near me. Especially if I haven't eaten yet and I'm cramping. Oh Lord. There's nothing worse than being woken out of your sleep via cramping and going to the bathroom, or even just feeling like you could just feel that you're bleeding, and it's like, damn, now I have to get up. Because then if I don't get up now, I'm probably going to keep bleeding, and then it's going to get into my sheets, and it's going to get into my mattress, and then I'm really going to be fucking pissed off. Monthly, this happens to us, and it's going to happen to us for a while. I think I read somewhere that maybe we have like 538 periods in our life. Maybe I'm dragging it. 358. I can't remember the numbers exactly. But that's a lot of periods. Might as well try to start to learn and figure out what works, what doesn't, what helps, what doesn't. Well, thank you for joining me for another episode of The Inside Perspective. I appreciate you taking the time to learn, experience, and grow with me intentionally. And I hope that you take the time to take care of yourself and you found something fruitful from today's episode. Like, comment, subscribe if you're here on the YouTube. I don't know why I say it like that, but I appreciate you taking the time with me. All praise, all love, and everything to the Most High. Until next time, Insiders.